Today on Co-op for Two, a quick spoiler-free review of Murderous Muses. What is this odd little game? Let's find out. Murderous Muses is an odd little game. It's made by a company that sells on Amazon murder mystery dinner type games. And there's also a computer game called Murderous Muses, which this is based on, where you solve murders that change depending on every time you play it. The culprit changes. This is something different. It's set in the world of this video game, but there is only one ending. It's one little case. It sells for about $25, $30, I think, on Amazon. I purchased this myself in 2024, but it's been out for a couple years, but without fanfare. It'll take you about an hour and a half, 2 hours to play, I think. I would rate its difficulty at medium to easy medium. It does have a couple of 1-minute super short videos on YouTube that are connected to it, but transcripts are in this box here. So you don't need the internet for anything. You don't need it for the solution. It's a very low-tech game in that respect. Nothing gets destroyed. You can only play it once, but you could then pass it along or sell it. Alright, so I've said this is going to be a spoiler-free review, but I do want to show you the contents briefly to give you an idea of what you're in for, because there's a bit of a hybrid system here. I've called it a cold case game, but it's probably more appropriate to call it sort of a mashup between a cold case game and a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective-style directory-based game. But we'll take a look at it. If you're really sensitive about spoilers, you can use the timestamps to jump around. So it comes in this plastic box for some reason. And let's just pull out all the components so you can see what's going on here. There's a bunch of sort of computer filtered photographs here. They're just on the back of postcards. They don't hold any real information. There are instructions on how to play. You can see how brief they are. They're not important. Okay, and then we've got some interesting stuff. That's where things get interesting here. First of all, the solution is just an 8.5 by 11 folded sheet, but it's a full page little epilogue and solution. You can see this is all, if you're used to a cold case game with deluxe pieces of handwritten stuff and newspaper print clippings on newspaper and stuff, you can see this is very low budget. It's all black and white 8.5 by 11 folded over stuff. There's no special stuff here. But it's got the kinds of things you would expect from a cold case game, which is we've got police reports, here's newspaper clipping, and then the majority of the game are these little interviews with suspects. Okay, so you got a whole bunch of those, just like you would find in a cold case game. All right, now, you've also got these transcripts from 4 videos that you'll find on YouTube. They're sort of set in a TV show. They're very short, and they're not staged. These aren't envelopes that stage you through the game like we've seen in lots of these type of games where you read one and you get a question and then you open it up. No, you get all access to all of this right at once. It's just that these also have corresponding very short videos to watch. Where things get interesting, though, is right here. In a normal cold case game, you just go through the documents and then you try to answer a question. In this case, who's the killer and why? But in Murderous Muses, in addition to the cold case documents, you've got this. It's a directory. It doesn't compare to the size of something like Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective. In fact, it's small enough that you could, and probably should, if you want to see everything, visit all these places. But these are all places you can go. There's no map of the world, but this is in a town, and you can go to all these places in the town. And this booklet here are the paragraphs that you read when you visit each of these places. So it really is a true hybrid game between a cold case game and a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style game where you visit all these places. And, you know, there are real things to read here. There are real full paragraphs. There are no super long paragraphs, but you will visit the scene of the crime, talk to lots of different people. The writing is good. It is entertaining. It is an entertaining story that had us perplexed and trying to figure out how to explain all the odd details. It's not super deep, and it's not going to challenge the directory stuff. Is not going to challenge you the way a Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style game would, when you're sitting there trying to figure out where could we go to get this information. Here you've just got a list. You're like, let's go here, then let's go here. You sort of go where your interest takes you. And you could go to all of them if you wanted to get the full experience. But even when you visit everything, there'll still be some mystery elements you're trying to figure out. There's a nice little supernatural involvement in this case where you're not 100% sure whether to believe the supernatural stuff or not. There's some creepy elements. Not enough, really. We wanted more. There's no puzzles in this. You just go through this, you try to understand it, and then when you think you understand it, you don't even answer a question. When you think you understand the case, then you just read the solution and you see how close you came to understanding everything. So we did have a good time with this. You can watch our live playthrough on YouTube. I think it took us about 7 hours, which will amount to about 2 hours for a normal playthrough, but we took 7 hours, and you can watch our full discussion filled with spoilers at the end of that if you're curious. What I would say, though, is that I really like the idea of this hybrid type of system. I'd like to see maybe more on the other end of the scale, more Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games with cold case documents that you discover. But I applaud this company dipping their toe into this space with something so interesting in terms of a hybrid game. Having said that, I think we did feel like we wanted a little more meat on the bones here, a little more writing, a little more story to sink our teeth into, a little more of a fully fleshed out case. It almost felt like, I mean, there's plenty to do here, but it almost felt like this was not 100% complete in terms of giving a rich experience. We were sort of teased by some of these elements, and we wanted more to the story at the end. And at the end, the sort of ending falls a little flat. It sort of ends with a whimper rather than a bang, and I think that's a shame, although the ride is pretty good here. So, for me, I guess I would give this maybe a 7 out of 10. The only tricky thing here is who to recommend it to. I mean, if you're an aficionado of the cold case games and the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective style games, you may be curious to try a hybrid and see what it's like. So I would recommend it for the people who are experienced in this space and want to see what something new is, especially if you can get it on sale. $30 feels a little high for this. But it's not really a great example of a cold case game, and it's not really, you're not going to really dig into finding subtle, intricate details in the documents. You're not really going to have those aha moments here. So I don't really want to recommend it to people new to the cold case genre or super fans of cold case. And for the Sherlock Holmes consulting detective people, I'm not sure this would be a totally satisfying experience because there's a small enough number of places that you just go through them. But it is an interesting experiment. The biggest take home for me is I'd love to see more of these. I would love to see more experiments with this hybrid format. I'm not sure we'll see any more from this company since this was released a couple years ago to no fanfare and didn't seem, it sort of isn't released in the board game space or in the murder mystery dinner space, so it sort of flew under the radar. But it does deserve some attention. It is well written. It is a nicely done case. If you can get it cheap, I would recommend picking it up. And if they make more, we'll play more. If you happen to play this, and there can't be that many people who have, I'd like to hear it and hear what you thought. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next video.